Right, so I've got a very basic setup there for my car parks, and my ramp is probably not right at all because it's going from the ground there to the upper level when really that ramp there should be going to the lower level car park, and we're going to change those levels anyway. So I'm not going to go too much further with the car park at this stage because I want to go and then work out my ground floor level, because that really is going to determine a lot of those other things for the car park. So you can see here in the floor plan for the ground floor, we can see the floor level there, and also in the section, of course, you'll see all those levels. So I'm just going to try to get the floor level to match, the floor level of the ground floor to match in my project, and then we know that these car park levels are too low anyway, so they would need to be made bigger. We're going to make them at least 3 metres before the floor, and then so they'll be at least a metre below at the bottom there. But we'll come back to that after the ground floor's been established. So here, that later. So again, here it's 43.5. So looking at my drawing here, you can see that mine is much lower than that. And so rather than just adjust that level so that it doesn't continue or affect my car park too much, so I can avoid making lots of adjustments there for the time being, I'm going to bring the whole thing up, so all of the levels. And so it was 43.5, wasn't it? I'm sure it was. Yes, 43.5. So I need to bring this up a metre, and a simple way is to use Control, hold down the Control key and select all 3 levels, then let go of Control, click the Move button, click a base point, and then point it in the direction you want the levels to move, which will be vertically at 90 degrees, and type in the distance, 1000. Enter, and they'll all move together. Right, so if I just moved the ground floor, it would have affected my stairs and maybe even my ramp, because those things are between those 2 levels. So with the ground floor now at the correct height, I can go to the ground floor floor plan, and so going to the file, back to the floor plan. I'm essentially going to just copy what's there as a starting point, and I think it's good if you treat this building as a template, and then you should be able to do lots of variations on this. Honestly, I don't think it's going to take all that long for us to get the bulk of it modelled up, and then I can look at different design typologies. That's what I'm going to try and maybe get you to experiment with. So getting different basic design forms from that one starting shape. And that's what Revit's good at. It's great at making changes once you've done an initial setup. So again, copying these things here, we've got the columns there, which is 600 concrete columns, and they're basically at almost every grid line, so we can put them in fairly quickly using the method that you probably have used already with structural columns. Load family, and of course they're in the structural columns folder, not columns. So I want to just spend hours trying to load things in from here and forget that they're trying to load structural columns. So they're architectural columns if you're wondering, and they can be useful but not in this case. So again, go to structural columns, concrete, and then concrete round column, and so here we've got these new ones with the drop caps. So I'm actually going to replace what I've done on the car park level with these as well, maybe. But for now, I'll get that concrete round column. And so if you haven't used that tool recently, just remember it'll sometimes come in with the depth option chosen as a starting point. So make sure you realise there you need to set that to height, and then you can choose the level that you want it to go to. So in this case, it's starting on the ground floor, and this file, so I thought this is one that had my levels. Okay, well I'll just put one in, I'm going to have it unconnected, just so I don't have to do all the settings again. And looking in here, I do have a 600, so I'll just put one in anywhere, and I can see it. That's half the battle. In the 3D view, then I can of course see that as well, but I should have a floor there as well, maybe to cover the car park if I don't go too much further. But more importantly, I need levels, so I think mostly have the levels, but I'm just going to quickly put in some more and maybe give you a little tip on making levels. So I don't know if I've shown you the difference when you copy a level as opposed to using the level tool. It's only a little thing, so I'll just click the level tool and draw a level the way you probably do normally by clicking left to right, and then I can change the name to, so it's 04 level 1. Yes, always yes to rename corresponding views, and then if we need to, we can change the height, and maybe I'll get the right height to begin with, 48,000. Okay, so that works, but then you might have thought about copying levels to save time instead of using the level tool to make them. And that works. So you can select a level and then click copy, pick a point, your base point, and then go in the direction you want and type in how far you want it to go. So that probably wasn't far enough, but I can go and adjust that now, 51,600. So it's worked, it's made a level for me, but the difference is it's got the black arrow there, and that means that's telling you something. What it's saying is there's no view associated with that. And that's an important thing. So when you see that, hopefully you realise that levels are not the same as views. And it's actually a pretty important thing with Revit. Levels are your base host object. So you cannot have a project without a level. Levels host everything. So anything you make needs to exist in a level. And so if you delete things that have been made on a particular level, all of those objects go as well. So they're your base host element, they host everything else, but the views are separate to that. So I can delete this level 1 floor plan, and I'll do that, and the level doesn't go. You've also got a level 1 ceiling plan, I can delete that too. So now I don't have any floor plans or ceiling plans associated with level 1. It should be going black actually, maybe there must be one still there. Normally it'll go black if there aren't any views associated with it. And but what I was trying to show you there is that the level's still there, even though the plans for that level aren't there anymore. So plans and levels are independent, or views and levels are independent. I'll undo that though, I do want those floor plans, but I also want a floor plan for level 2. And you come across this quite often when you're trying to make a lot of levels, because it often is quicker and easier to copy them, having made 1 or 2, instead of using the level tool to make them open over again. And you often come across this situation when you see these black levels or black arrowheads come up in your levels. And it's not a problem, it's easy to make views. Go to the View tab, and then you've got Plan Views and Floor Plan. And by default, it only shows the levels that don't have a view already made for them. So it's a really quick and easy step just to make all those floor plans for those levels, and then they should go blue to show me that they do now have floor plan. And I can make the ceiling plans the same way. So again, on the plan views, select the ceiling plan and then choose the levels you want. Normally you can just choose everything because you normally do want a view for every level. And that's it. So, so again, that really is a good thing to know, I think, and helps with the overall understanding of Revit. But most importantly, now I can go back to the ground floor plan, and when I select this column, I can change the top level. So instead of being done with an offset, I can just set that to level 1 and top offset 0. And you might think, well, what's that done? It hasn't changed the height. It's still the same height it was before. But importantly, it's associated with the levels at the bottom and the top. So if those levels move, the column changes. And it will probably move. Okay, I'm going to delete that column because I want to go back then to the ground floor plan. So that's my ceiling plan. The ground floor plan. And I'm going to just probably remind you, I think a lot of people have seen this before, when you make structural columns, you've got the option at grids. Have you all seen that one? Yeah. Really useful. That's why you make grids for columns. Yeah. So if I just click there at grids, and well, notice the options bar has disappeared. So I'm going to cancel that and then change that option first to the level that I want, level 1, and everything else is set from before. So now I can go back to at grids, and I'm just going to click and drag over the whole lot because it only looks for grid lines. It won't select anything else. And there we go. Columns at every grid, which is a real time saver. Tick to finish, and so I might just put in a basic floor, which I'll change as I work it out. So I'm going to use the floor tool then, and I'll use pick walls, I think, but might change as well. So I'm just going to pick the outside edge of these walls from the level below, tick to finish, and I'll say yes to attach the walls there. I don't mind if they're attached. So that just makes it much easier to look at, especially in the 3D view. And then you'll duplicate those up to the other levels. But before you do that, it's probably worth getting most of the other elements there drawn as well, especially anything that you think might be repeated on the upper levels. So you can see there's a lot of commonality. The lift shaft, even the stairs will have a lot of things that are related. Definitely the amenities there, the toilets and some of those other areas. A bit of crossover into level 1. Stairs over here, a lot of things there are carrying over. Curtain walls, maybe not so much, but it'll definitely use the same curtain wall type. So the last thing I was just going to show you there is how to set up your own curtain wall mullions and set them up in a curtain wall type. It's not a family, it's a type that you make for a wall, and I'm fussy with that terminology just because it helps me to understand what's happening. So I've got a wall, so using the wall tool, in properties I've got some curtain walls there that you've probably all seen whenever you start with the Australian template. You'll get those two curtain wall types. You notice I'm not pulling in families. If I choose one, let's start with we'll do storefront, and then if I go to edit type, you can see there storefront is the type, the family is curtain wall. So you actually can't make your own wall families. They're hard coded, so essentially you've got 3 different kinds of wall families. You've got basic walls, curtain walls, stack walls, and that's it for walls. And that's all you need. You don't need any others. Anything else you can make with model in place. So it's actually a good setup. And then to make your own kinds of walls, you're not making new families, you're just duplicating types. So curtain wall 6mm thick glazing is just plain glass. Storefront has 50 by 150 mullions with this spacing. So looking at the drawing, this is pretty close to the one you'll need. And so looking at the section there, you can see it's got bottom plates and top plates that are exposed. That's probably one of the things you need to think about first with things like curtain walls, because often they'll be recessed. So they're not visible, and if they're not visible, you don't really need to draw them. So, especially for DA drawing, which is what we're doing, you could leave them out. Yeah, so you actually chase into the slab, or have a you know, a hole in the slab, or what do you call it, levate, and the frame would be hidden, concealed within the slab essentially, or within the floor. They probably have a floor structure. So if that was the case, I wouldn't start with storefront. I'd start with the 6mm thick glazing. But starting with storefront, I can definitely adjust it. So I'm going to duplicate that, and we'll call it facade. And then the spacing is on here somewhere. Don't really need to know it now because that's a simple thing to adjust later, but it is here somewhere. And, well, look by eye, it looks, if that's 1830, yeah, 1200. So I'm going to change the vertical grid there to 1200 maximum spacing. Then the horizontal grid, you'll see if you look in the section as well. You've got here this one which is higher than the others, so we'll probably adjust that. And again, we don't have a clear measurement, so I'll just by eye say that is 3 meters, maybe 35. We'll adjust it, so I'll say 3500. And that's not a bad starting point. So we'll click OK.
You can't actually fix those to the wall level.
Well, the top and the bottom are. So the top and the bottom are fixed to the, well, that's the top and the bottom of the wall, and that'll be linked to a floor or a steel or something usually. So yeah, so the bottom plate is at the bottom automatically, and the top plate is at the top. And then these are the divisions we're doing now, they're in between those. So I'll just draw this fairly roughly, and you can look at the dimensions in the drawing here to make it more accurate. So from the grid there, 1550, and then coming back the other way, so it's about 4 metres, so 1500 roughly from that grid line 1, and I'll fine tune that as I go. So here I'm going to start, and then remember with walls, generally, not just curtain walls, it's often a good idea to draw them clockwise, or if you're drawing them anti-clockwise, if I was coming down this way, you can use space to flip it the right way. And you need to be comfortable with that when you start working with curtain walls, because you can't just change the location line. It's always what centre line. There's no option there for location line with curtain walls, and there shouldn't be. You don't need it. But again, you need to make sure you either draw clockwise or know the option to flip it. So I'll do it anti-clockwise with space, and that's fine. We're just drawing a wall there. And I didn't set the height, so I'll select it now and just change the top constraint to what I should have, which is level 1 for now, but we'll bring it down probably under the slab once the next slab's gone in. So I'm not trying to draw the finished wall there, I'm just trying to get a curtain wall drawn with the name that I've just given it. And I might even switch to a 3D view now just to show you that. Because what I want to do now is finish it off and do the mullions. So this isn't the mullion I want. And I might even show you how to change the glass as well. Okay, so this is actually the process you probably need to use, because if you haven't got something that you can select there, it's very hard to go and edit it. So by drawing it, you can then select the mullion, and that makes it easy to edit. There is another way, but once you see it, you'll probably realise why I'm doing it this way. In your project browser, you've got your families area. So if you don't know about that one, that's a really good thing to know as well. You can go down there and find any family in your project. And so there is here the section for curtain wall mullions, and so I could go there to edit them. So this here is a rectangle. If you select it, you'll see here the name. There it is. So this is rectangular mullion 50 by 150. So here it is, rectangular mullion, and there's my 50 by 150. So if I right click there, I can go to edit, in theory. But it's greyed out, and again there's a reason for that. So instead, selecting it on the screen, probably easier, unpin it, and now I'll select it again. And now sorry, I can't go to edit type, but I can show you something you need to do as well. If I select that and go to edit type, the load button's greyed out. I don't know if you've seen that happen before. I think it's actually a bug in Revit. So what I'll do is go and load in on the insert tab using load family. I'm just going to load in a mullion. So they're in they're profiles anyway, so I'm thinking of the wrong thing. So they're just going back here. So here, if I select the mullion and go to edit type, the load button there is greyed out. But also the other thing I should have shown you is that the profile here, that profile there is default. And this is actually the family that I need to edit. So mullion's a little bit different to some other families. The panel I'll show you in a minute, and that's a bit more standard. So have you done profile families before? No? No. They're easy. Profile families are the best because they're the simplest, they're 2D. So I'm going to go and make one now. There is a quicker and easier way, but I want to show you, how to understand this stuff. So again, I'm just going to go to the main menu, go to New, Family, and then if I scroll down, you'll see Metric, Profile, Mullion. Sounds complicated, but again, it's one of the easiest ones to make. And they give you some nice little pointers here to tell you what it's going to do. So curtain panels, being trimmed, and other things. I'm not going to do anything too complicated though. I'm just going to click on the line tool and then go into a rectangle around this center point. And then just click 2 points. And then, so hopefully getting used to drawing this way in Revit, just drawing things roughly the shape you need, then coming back and using things like dimensions to make it the right size. So I've drawn dimensions for the center line, now I'm drawing dimensions for the outer sides, or the outer edges. And now I'll select the dimension there for the center line and make that equals. And this one, this one here, I'll do the same thing. And then I can select any of these lines and adjust the measurement over here. Now, sorry, I've got to put in a parameter for that. So here you can see it's, I select the number, it's going to bump me out of it. It's one of those things. But if you put in a parameter, trying to avoid this, but I'll give it away. So if you miss that, I've just selected the dimension and click the new button, create parameter button there. So this will be depth. And then the other one, if I select that, will be width. This is just a family thing. A project you wouldn't have to do this, but in families you have to, unfortunately. So now it's even easier. I could select the line and then it will let me change that parameter. But if I select the dimension, it works as well. So is that surprising? If you are used to trying that in a project, you might be trying to force yourself not to do that. No, but I mean selecting a dimension, often when you, say if you select an object and then you can change the dimension, you can change the measurement. But if you select the dimension, you can't change the numbers. And that's a common issue. People go, well, I know I can do it. I know the dimensions can change, but I'm selecting the dimension and the numbers won't change. Right? So in a project that's normal, but here in a family, it's going to work. Just a little thing. So if you're repeating what I'm doing, it should all work pretty well. So I've made this 150 by 50, which is the size it was. I actually want to make it less than that, so let's make it 30 by 150, and that's probably okay to start with. So I'm going to go to Save As, Family. I'll save it in the folder that you can get to in case you do want to use it, but it's an easy one to make, so I think it's probably not a bad idea to try that. Where did I put? I haven't made a recess folder. I'll just save it here. So I'll call it mullion profile. That's it, mullion profile. And so I'm going to use load into project and just make sure I've selected the right one. Click OK, and then I can go down. Well, I can do it in this view, but I'll do it in a 3D view just so that you can see. So again, I'm going to select 1 mullion, and this one is the one that I unpinned before. The others are still pinned, and that's simply because we set that spacing before. Well, I set the spacing, but again now if I select the one that's unpinned, I can go to Edit Type and change the profile. So now I can choose the one I've just named and saved, which you can see there's mullion profile. Click OK, and notice they all change, right? Because if the wall, curtain wall, is using this rectangular mullion, sorry, and I didn't duplicate it. Let's go back to Edit Type. Okay, so it's using rectangular mullion, and the type there, 50 by 150, is now set to use the new profile. So the only problem now is that this type, called 51 by 150, is no longer that size. That's just a name that it's been given. So I'm going to go and rename that and put in the real size, which is now 30 by 150. We'll probably change it later. So that's only a little thing, but there's no need to keep the old size, so that's fine. Okay, so again, once you've tried those things, I know it might seem like a lot to remember, but when you experiment with those things, it's probably a lot clearer. So what I might also do is just quickly put in a panel that's different to what's there. So just like the mullions, it'll make it easier if you've drawn a wall, curtain wall, and then you can select the glass. So here again I can just select that, and don't worry about the fact that the glass isn't getting trimmed by the mullions. That's to do with that profile, and I'll come back to that later. But again, for now, as long as I select that panel, watch out for this option, Edit in Place isn't usually going to be very helpful. If you go to Edit Type, though, this is where finally I get back to what I mentioned before about that load button. And this is really the last major thing I wanted to show you. That's a bug. That's definitely a bug in the program. That button should be there. And I know it's a bug because it was there in the previous releases up to 2015. That worked just fine every time. So it's easy to fix those, it's not a huge drama, and that's why they probably haven't even noticed that it's a problem, or the developers. So to fix it, all you do is load in a panel family, and then it'll work. So to load in a panel family, go to the Insert tab, Load Family, and go to the curtain wall panels folder, where that's where you've got all the doors that you've probably already used, and just load in any of those, doesn't matter which one. Once you've loaded one, now watch what happens. I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. Select that panel, go to edit type, now it works. So you just do it once, and then you'll see it'll work. So so again, most of that is just realizing that you've got that load family button on the insert tab, which works regardless of the kind of family you're trying to load. You can just load a family without using a particular tool like window or component or curtain wall. So again, now with tab, I can select the panel, and when I go to edit type, I can go to load and load in any other family from there, even a solid panel. Probably wouldn't make sense here. I don't think I'll show you how to make a panel, because that'll take too long, but a nice option there that you may not know about, if I especially get rid of one of the mullions there on the bottom, by unpinning it, I can then delete it. So now I've just got a panel then that I could make it a door, because again we've got the bottom plate removed. But you can set any wall as a panel. So you can set brick 110 as a panel. Any wall there, and it's easy to see this, so when you select a panel in a curtain wall, and maybe I should have emphasised this a bit more, I'm using tab to highlight the panels before I select them. So back to edit type, and so you can see it here as well, just is a bit different. You have to go and choose the family first before then you can see all the walls. So basic wall is going to give you all the basic wall types. But if you, getting the panel again, if you look in the list here, it just shows you everything together. So you've got all the walls, the basic walls at the top, then you could have curtain walls within the curtain wall. So you could have a curtain wall that has panels that are made of curtain walls. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. Maybe you never would. But again, you've got the other types here, the door panels, the other ones that I've loaded, the solid panel, and so on. All those system panels, and again, going back to the basic wall types, any of those that you've made previously or loaded in. So that can be helpful. And you can also set panels in the wall type. So there, you can see I've just made a new curtain wall, but how is it known what glass to put in there? So this is the curtain wall that I made, called facade. It's picked up the mullions, because if I select that wall, you'll see when I go to edit type that it's using this 30 by 150 mullion that I've set there. But the panel isn't always set. So if the panel's on none, that doesn't mean it won't have any panels, it just means it uses the default panel, which is plain glass. So if you don't set a panel, that's what it'll use. But you've got the same options there, so you can preset a panel that's different if you want it. So maybe just to finish off, I'll remind you about the other things in a curtain wall. So we've looked at the curtain wall itself. That is a single object, and you can see that when you highlight the edge, it's going to give you that dashed border around the outside. So that's your system family, curtain wall. And then it's obviously hosting all of these other things like the mullions and the panels. So they're families, they're loadable or component families, they're your normal Revit families. And then there's one other object. So have you looked at putting curtain grids in or adjusting grids? Using tab, you can, so much, you can see them when you select the grid with tab. You can see that dashed line there. If it's got a spacing set, you won't be able to edit it until you unpin it. But then you can definitely make it have an uneven spacing. And that's often easier than trying to do everything in the type properties. So here, where we've got the wall in section, you can see with the different heights. So we've got, that's on the next one. Yeah, so we've got the different heights you can see there in the curtain wall. Right, so this here is a different height to this one. Rather than making two different wall types, you can just adjust the grid after you've made them. So again, to adjust that height, I just need to unpin it after I've selected it. If I try to change it now, it won't budge. If I unpin it, I can change that height, but it's still that facade curtain wall. I don't need to duplicate or anything like that. So really important when you start to make the curtain walls that you do have a type. So you've duplicated one of those starting ones and you've given it a name, and then you can go and modify that type later. It doesn't need to be set up perfectly, you just need to have you know, a basic setup like this. And you know, just think of all the basic principles of curtain walls. Has anyone ever just explained to you what a curtain wall is? Not in Revit, but just generally. Because it's an important thing, architecturally they're important, it's an important term. So I might just finish up with that and give you some time to work on them. So, good old Mr. Google will give us a pretty good idea, but I know what they're going to say. The Bauhaus School is the first one. Totally wrong, but oh no, maybe they've changed it. Wikipedia, but maybe not. So sometimes people will say this is one of the earliest examples of a curtain wall. It is one of the earliest examples of what probably most people think of as a curtain wall because it's glass. And what makes it a curtain wall is the fact that it's not structural. So it's an exterior wall, it's wrapping the building, but it's not structural except that it may be self-supporting, but it's not supporting anything else. And so it is almost like a curtain. But it goes much earlier than modernism, or goes at least the beginnings of modernism. If you know the building in so many TV shows and movies in New York, it's called the Flatiron Building, if anyone knows that one. But you'd know it in the beginning of, what is it, Sex and the City, I think? The triangular sort of wedge-shaped building that's on a narrow corner. It's a beautiful building, and so yes, that's called the Flatiron Building, and I think it's not Louis Sullivan, but it's someone from the same era, and that's a curtain wall. Looks stone, it is stone veneer, but it's the same principle as this. It's a non-structural wall that wraps the building, and it's got I think a steel frame with the veneer applied to it, and so they're panels that have a steel structure behind it, and that's what supports the building. And it's the only way they could have built that because the footprint would have been totally taken up by the walls if they built it the traditional way, which was to have really thick walls on the lower levels, getting narrower as it went up. And if you've seen any of those buildings in Chicago, the old skyscrapers there, they have meters thick walls at the bottom, all those, you know, Louis Sullivan buildings. So curtain walls are, you know, going to give you lots of options that, you know, makes them occur because it's not structural. I think it even goes back earlier. Castles and other, you know, military buildings like that used to have curtain walls. They used that term for the walls that weren't structural. So, so again, I think it's one of those ubiquitous terms that maybe has come to mean, you know, a glass wall typically, but it can be other things. And you know, buildings across the road are a good example of how you can use panels, solid panels, to build up a pattern. And maybe not the best pattern in the world, but at least they've done something. And that's something that a lot of people like Seidler and who else, lots of architects do patterns in their curtain walls just by varying the panels. And that's an easy thing you can do with Revit. What's the got here? So I suppose these are curtain walls, are they? I don't know. They could be. Yeah, I suppose technically in a way they are, because they're not structural, but yeah, there's a good example. So that's like a bit of a crystal palace almost, probably some greenhouse or something. And it's in Mexico, so it's nothing to do with crystal palace. Anyway, so I'll need some time to work on that, and just let me know though if there's anything on that ground floor especially that you're not sure about. Do you know about the lift family? That, oh, there's a wall missing there, don't know what's happened there. But if you're going to try and put the lift in, is there a family that you've come to prefer from the library? Yeah? Oh, okay. So look, I know I've said I'll finish a few times now, but I will just show you this last thing because it'll help you. I'm putting a wall in with the component tool. If you go to load family, and then it's in specialty equipment, commercial, lift Setout Oz. Trust me, that one is better than any of the others in the default library. The lift Setout AUS, don't try and use the ones that have really complex cars or tracks or anything like that. It's overkill, it'll get in the way usually and won't look as good. This one, you're mainly using it for the door. So cut a hole in the wall and put a door in. The box car you'll need to do some work on anyway, but that's easy. The main purpose of this again is to get that door so it looks good when you do perspectives. You've got something that looks like a real lift door with the buttons and all the other nice things that it gives you. And you just copy that up onto the different levels. So that's what I'll be doing there. But like I said, I'll give some time to work on it unless there's anything else with the ground floor. Do you know the, so I'm just trying to think of things that you will come across. The tiles, how would you think about doing that?
I'll go, I know we did it last year.
Yep. Are you thinking split face? Is that ringing bells using the split face tool? It's a good option to know about, but maybe just remember for now, I'm going to show you a way that I think is better. Split face is pretty good. It's good for little one-off things, but if you're doing a lot of it and you're doing a lot of it here, I've got a better one. So I'll show you that later. But think about those things. You will need a few different floor materials. And yeah, you should know the split face tool, but again, I'll show you a way I think is better. Maybe not everyone would, but you might think it's good as well. So otherwise, hopefully that's going to give you plenty to go on with. And if you get that done, don't be afraid to move on to the upper levels, and don't try and make them complete and perfect. Just try and rough them out so you can get a good idea of all the things that we need to think about as a whole, particularly the structure. So we want to get all the columns particularly worked out, and the floors as well. So when you're doing the floor plates, again, don't be too fussy about the shape of the edges of your floor. Even just a rectangular floor to begin with for each one, and it's often then easy to go and change the shape. But having that floor in section is going to help you a lot to establish all the overall heights and connections between things. So, you know, shafts, all those things, you can't really do those until you've got the floor. So, I won't say any more. I'll just give you some time to try all those things.